Live from the Talking Joe Studios. It's Talking Joe.
Talking Joe is on the air.
Hey, it's me, Mark, and welcome to Talking Joe, the G.I. Joe comics podcast. Now, today we will be looking at G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, Silent Missions, Spriit, Issue 1, released Wednesday, April the 16th, 2025. Now, in this standalone issue from Leonardo Romero, the iconic G.I. Joe duo of Spriit and Freedom investigate mysterious disappearances in a nearby forest, only to discover a grotesque experiment. Now, I won't be talking about this issue by myself. As always, I will be joined by my co-host. It's A Real American Tim. It's Tim Finn.
Hello, Mark. Hello, viewers and listeners.
Hi, Tim. That one wasn't quite so silent. Let's see. What did editor Alex Antone have to say about this issue? He said, Leonardo Romero is one of the very best storytellers in comics, and this issue is an absolute masterclass. His take on Spriit captures the heart and courage of this character, while showing us just how badass a man and his eagle can be. So a Spriit solo issue. I think this is the first time we've ever had a Spriit issue with Spriit as the headline character in the title. I don't think that's ever been a thing before. So that is fun to see. And bit of inspiration, I guess, from classified Spriit here, because we're used to seeing the historic Spriit would look like this with his red. What I don't even know what the name of the thing is. This is the thing that goes around his waist. Is a little bit like a skirt or a pouch, but apparently is not culturally correct for the look of Spriit. So in the classified design, this guy here sort of had a little bit of an update versus the traditional look. You can see that they're very, very similar. Blue shirt, red t-shirt underneath, red headband, these sort of tan coloured trousers, boots. He's got a knife in a holster or a sheath on his chest. He's got the hair in what do you call them? Pigtails, ponytails? I don't know. I'm not a girl. And so very, very similar, but not identical. And also, in terms of the look of the weapon on the cover and so on, I think it's leaning a little bit into the classified design. But in places, I think we can see parts of his original V1 rifle thing as well, which seem to have these kind of look to me like they were almost loaded up with darts or something in that magazine. Yeah. Is that what you used to think, that they were a kind of dart? Yeah.
Yes. I believe we have seen Spriit in the regular Larry Hama Real American Hero series without that belt waist accessory. And I don't remember when or where, but I do feel like that was dropped before there was a classified figure. I feel like I've seen Shannon Gallant draw this character in, I don't know, issue 220 or 270.
So we are into week 3 of the Silent Missions. This is the April 18th. We've had Beachhead and Jinx by this point, with Roadblock and Duke still to come. Leonardo Romero is the superstar artist on this one. Writer, penciler, Leonardo Romero, let's not forget. Best known for his work on Kate Bishop Hawkeye and Birds of Prey, both with Kelly Thompson. He also did a lot of work apparently on the new Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, some of the design work on character design. But more importantly than that, he's been on G.I. Joe before on the cover of Scarlet issue 1 with this striking cover that I'm showing on screen now with sort of Scarlet and Stalker together. And if I remember correctly, when we looked at this previously, we liked it a lot.
I think I talked about it for 37 minutes. You just a moment ago described Leonardo Romero as writer penciler of the Spriit issue. So, folks, Mark and I don't have a hard copy of this comic book. We're recording a bit in advance. We're working off of PDFs, which don't have the inside front cover credits. All we've got is the cover. Is Cris Peter the? He must be the colorist, right? Leonardo Romero is also the inker, right?
Yeah. So Cris Peter is the colorist on this one. It's actually quite an interesting little tidbit of information there that when the original solicits for this particular series came out, Mateus Lopes was solicited as the color artist, but between the original kind of reveal of the Silent month and the release of the book, there seems to have been a change in color artist, with it now being Cris Peter. I imagine it's one of those things where this issue, quite often at the point of solicits, you've only maybe done the front cover, possibly done some of the interiors, but it's not even been passed to the colorist at that point. So I imagine just somewhere in between, solicit and actually going to create the book, they switched out the colorist for what could have been a host of different reasons.
Mark, do you want to change the image on screen so we're back to this G.I. Joe universe?
So shall we? Oh, okay, right. Creative team. Let's finish it out. We've talked about the writer, artist being Leonardo Romero, colorist Cris Peter, letterist N.A., editor Alex Antone, publication design Jillian Crab, and creative consultant Diana Davis. So what if we were to pick up these covers and have a look at the front of them? What do you think we might discover?
Let's have a look at the covers in the gallery.
Cover A is drawn by Leonardo Romero. Mark, do we know the color artist of the cover?
Ooh, I don't know with 100% certainty on that one. It could be Leonardo Romero solo, or it could be with the interior colorist.
Okay. Cris Peter. All right. So camera is at about 2 feet off the ground, but it's looking a little bit up at Spriit. We see 2/3 of him. We see him from basically the knees up. He is standing a little proud, a little defiant. His right arm is up, and his forearm is away from us, and he's I think feeding Freedom. Freedom is on Spirit's left shoulder, and Freedom's wings are fully spread. Behind Freedom's head is the sun, and radiating out from it are some sort of light highlights as beams of color. The light source here is not inked specifically on Spriit, although the inking on the tree on the left and the sort of rocks on the bottom do show that light source coming from the right and up off in the distance. So the sky is yellow. Spirit's got some yellow highlights on him. This is a great cover. It is a quiet moment, right? His rifle is slung over his shoulder, but his left hand is resting on a pouch on his left thigh, hanging from his belt. And I don't have the figure in front of me, so I don't know if that's where a pistol or a knife goes. But Spriit is ready. He's ready in this panel, right? And Freedom is ready to start the mission, attack, launch. Really nice cover. Leonardo Romero, also an artist who I have quietly hoped for years would somehow draw G.I. Joe and could never allow myself to think it would happen. Cover C is this same image, and it's all in black and white. Mark, you're going to add something about this pouch?
I was just going to say, I think his looking closely at the figure, I think he was using the classified figure there as reference, just going by the detail of the pouches and so on. That
okay. That's where a second
yeah.
Is. Cover B, drawn by Jorge Fornés. This is Spriit is kneeling in the snow. He's not covered in snow, and he's not wearing a jacket. It's just his normal sleeves rolled up blue shirt costume. He is facing to the left, which is a little less common than characters facing toward the right on American comic book covers. The bottom third of the background is just all white for snow, and then 2/3 of the background behind Spriit and Freedom, who's just taken off from Spirit's right shoulder, or perhaps about to land, is trees in winter with snow. So trees without leaves, and all the branches have sort of white on top of them. Spriit is looking through the scope on his rifle, and that is his classic 1983, right? 1983, 84 rifle, not a classified rifle. Looking with some determination through the scope. And our artist Fornés uses a little bit of mechanical tone of dots for some shading on the bottom of Spirit's arm, sort of the side of his jaw, maybe a little bit in the trees in the background. I can't tell. But a nice cover that mixes sort of busy and calm, right? Because sort of the bottom part of the cover is quite calm, and sort of the middle and top of the cover gets more sort of active. And then cover D is this same image, and now sort of with a red, white, and blue stripe almost covering all of it, except that the star and the J of the 5 letters G.I. Joe have been placed on top of it. And so I have to think that Fornés was using this template. Fornés knew when he drew his 5 covers, this is a guess, knew when he drew his 5 covers that the characters would be sort of peering out from behind these oddly shaped, quote, windows of these 5 letters. Because otherwise you'd have to get really lucky. It's like, well, I'm gonna draw an eagle somewhere on this cover. Oh, good thing it happens to line up with where the star is, so we can see the eagle's face and not like just the tip of its wing. And similarly, we see Spirit's face in part of the J. We see the end of his sight, that red sort of lens on it on the other part of the J. Mark, are there any variant retailer exclusive variant covers for Silent Mission's Spriit?
As at the time of recording, there is just the Peter Smith combined covers that we are aware of. So a grouping of the whole 6 issues with a solo spotlight for the relevant character on each one. So with this one, we've got Knees Up for Spriit and Freedom on the front cover, with a background of sort of a metallic grey looking base, sort of drawn in a bit like an animated style, you might say. Spriit, arms crossed, looking relatively determined. Freedom perched upon his shoulder, looking patriotic.
Can I just add two quick things, Mark? I made this comment before when talking about junkyard and order. Because of the scale of pets in the 80s G.I. Joe toys, I'm always surprised when I see one of these animals in real life or drawn at a proper scale. And as these artists drawing this Spriit cover are either looking at real photos of eagles or referencing the classified toy, oh, eagles are really big. And they're bigger in scale than they were in the 80s toy line. Could we go back for a moment to cover A by Leonardo Romero? I just wanted to call out a small detail here, which I really appreciate. People from different parts of the world, people with different genetic heritages have different facial features, right? Like noses, cheekbones, lips, chins, eyes, like I have different eyes than someone from Japan. I have different cheekbones than someone from, Iceland or like Ethiopia. And Leonardo Romero draws with some specificity Spirit's nose and cheekbones and chin and sort of the muscles under his eyes. And it's hard to sort of put precisely in words, but I look at Spriit in this drawing here, and besides some of the trappings of, I know this character, he's got a headband, he's got an eagle, he's got long hair, oh, maybe he's a Native American. I look at that face and say, and also the complexion, I look at that face and I say, that is a Native American face. And I know that there are differences between different tribes, but this is not a Caucasian man who happens to have darker skin. And this is also not a stock male hero comic book face that happens to have darker skin. There is some specificity here, and I that's hard to get, and that's great.
Particularly with those few lines as used by Leonardo Romero.
Yes. Is this plot breakdown?
Plot breakdown.
Spriit encounters an injured fox in the forest and follows some mysterious oversized footprints to a Revanche Robotics base. Spriit makes his way around the apparently deserted base, but encounters a giant rampaging robot. Spriit the Eagle tries to help, but is knocked aside. Spying a noteboard with a diagram of the robot, visor needs reinforcement. Spriit takes aim, shooting at the visor and exposing an organic-looking eye. The armoured creature tussles with Spriit and Freedom, but a second shot to the eye takes down the creature. Freedom gets a bandage for his poorly wing and a snack, while Duke and some reinforcements arrive. The end. Tim, what did you think of this one?
I thought this was a good issue. There's some really nice wordless storytelling progression across space, some sort of motivation and desire, some sort of some wordless communication between Spriit and Freedom. I like that this. If someone says to you, write a 20-page G.I. Joe story, very quickly you're going to have to decide, is it more grounded and maybe it's more like mechanical or like a realistic combat sensibility, or is it going to be more fantastic? Are you going to have a character like Serpentor, or are you going to have a robot, a big killer robot? And I don't need any one G.I. Joe story like the TV cartoon to sort of only exist in the TV world. If I could pretend that an episode could have been an issue, if I can read an issue and think, well, that, you could have made that an episode. And something about this, maybe it's the art style, something about this feels a little Sunbow, a little 1980s Sunbow Marvel Productions to me, which is fun.
I mean, just that sort of high level concept of there being an animal companion is I think inherently a little bit cartoony as a concept. So I combined with an animated look to it. I think it can sort of make you think of that Sunbow world, perhaps.
And Larry Hama has not, except for Timber, Larry Hama has not used the animals, the pets in G.I. Joe much.
Mm-hmm.
And, we think of Polly, and we think of Order, we think a little bit of Junkyard, and we think of Freedom. And there are so many pieces of dialogue that, you sort of remember from the 83 to 87 animated continuity. And, if we're going to throw in the Deke episodes, don't forget that Spearhead, Dusty shows up in his later costume, and Dusty has Sandstorm, his dog, wolf. Okay.
There's a fox, is it? Maybe?
Yeah.
I don't know. But I think as a theme of these silent issues, I kind of been looking at them and thinking, like, why is it that it's a silent issue? What is it about this particular issue that makes having it be silent, being wordless, make sense? And I guess one through line is that these are solo stories. So it's primarily one G.I. Joe protagonist on their own for the most part. And so they're not having to talk to their, colleagues. They're focused on their mission. So you don't need to worry about that dialogue between the two characters. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. What do you think? Blah, blah, blah. But also Spriit here isn't on his own. He's with Freedom, but Freedom is an eagle. He doesn't need to have that conversation. If there was conversation, it would be largely one-sided. So I think that makes sense as well. And then in terms of just the theme of this issue, I guess it's particularly in the beginning bit, it's leading into Spirit's strength of being a kind of silent, stealthy tracker. So he's going to need to be quiet as he's working his way through a forest, looking, listening for what's around him to kind of try and track the source of this initial mystery. As you get into the action later on, he's not even fighting against really any human characters. He's fighting against a giant, we can talk about it in a bit, but as this mechanical robot type thing, he's not necessarily interacting with someone that he would need to be speaking to. If he was speaking, it would be largely thinking out loud rather in that comic book way, rather than necessarily having to talk and communicate with another character. So it kind of makes sense that you don't necessarily need word balloons for this particular issue, but it's not necessarily silent. There is definitely action, which would create noise, but that's more in comics language. It's more SFX than dialogue.
There's an added layer or motif here. Spriit has a pet, and in this story there are also animals that are in trouble and need help. And there's also an animal, or sort of an animal, that's an antagonist. And I think if Spriit didn't have a pet and this same comic happened, this issue might slightly run the risk of the sort of the trope of the Native American character who's sort of more in touch with the world and animals and communicating with the natural world. That's not what's happening here. I think he's just being, I'm thinking of sort of the last 3 panels of the entire issue where he's nice to an animal. We can be more specific later. And the opening scene where he rescues an animal, but also Spriit does have a pet. And so, if there's an issue with Mutt, and Mutt's concerned about Junkyard and then sees another animal, whether it hits us over the head or not, this is a guy with a pet. He's a dog lover. So, maybe he can also be concerned about pets. And this is not to say that Joes that don't have pets aren't concerned about animals. I was struck by how many panels are on some of these pages, right? Page 1 has 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 panels. But it's actually drawn as a 16 panel grid, and there's sort of a little like overlap where what might have been sort of 2 panels becomes 1 panel. And these are small panels, and this is, there's visual storytelling here, where you just in the very first panel, we're seeing a tiny puddle, right, in the dirt out in the woods. And then the second panel is a paw, like a wolf sort of running past that spot. And then the next panel, a moment later, the wolf has made this paw prints and it continues to run, and the next wolf is sort of running into the shot. And there are all these blurred lines to show, speed. So I'm struck by the contrast of page 1, where there are 15 panels, and then you turn the page and you see page 2 and 3, and page 2 is a full splash that bleeds over onto page 3, so that you can have even more space for this scene where Spriit has rescued this animal, and he has this friend who feels like a park ranger, who's in a like U.S. forest truck, or maybe a vet, like a specialist vet, like out in the rural country. And what I really like about page 3, and this can start to put to the test editor Alex Antone's claim that this issue is a masterclass in storytelling. On page 3, there's some nice. The story is from pages 2 and 3. The story is keeping track of freedom. So on page 3, the splash that goes across 2 and 3, freedom is on the truck and sees Spriit, and then we don't see Spriit on the next. Freedom on the next panel, but we do see Spriit on the next panel, and then a few panels later, Spriit flies from the truck to Spriit. Freedom flies from the truck to Spriit, lands on Spirit's arm, and then there's this great finger hand motion, right, which is all wordless because the bird can't understand you, which you use words necessarily, of Spriit looping his hand in a circle as if to say, go up and fly around, do a fly around, right, making a little circle. And then the next panel, Freedom does, and has taken off, and it's hard to see, but there's even one feather that's come off. And then we have this reverse angle, the last panel on page 3, where we are either literally Freedom looking back, or we're sort of emotionally up 40 feet roughly where Freedom is looking back. And now we are aware that there's this great distance, and we're now, for the moment, we're off the ground with the bird. Pretty and well done.
Yeah, and it's interesting you talking about Freedom so much there, tracking where he is and stuff, because when I saw the solicit for this and they were talking about it being very much of Spriit and Freedom book, I was like, well, is it though? It's basically going to be Spriit, isn't it? Surely, but it is the case that Freedom is very much a character in this issue. He plays a very active part of the story. The camera, there is no camera, is tracking where he is a lot of the time. Spriit is sort of actively looking where he is. He's engaging in the plot in terms of he's over there in the corner, he's having a snack, or he's supporting Spriit distract the robot thing when he's attacking, or he's down and in the corner of the room and Spriit's concerned, or he's coming back, and all of these things. He's quite central to the plot, and much more so than I initially expected just from hearing about this issue.
Yeah. It's we see a lot of shipwreck in Larry Hama's. Well, we see relatively a lot of shipwreck in Larry Hama's G.I. Joe, and Polly's there sometimes, but I feel like it's just sort of like one word balloon, a little bit of comic relief, a little bit of a tension break, but never a big part of the story. When the cartoon uses Polly to save the day, that's a lot of fun. Strains credulity has happened more than once. Okay, so we're getting into the issue, and interestingly, page 2 and sort of on to 3 is this splash, this like page and a half splash. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It happens again, and I start to think, oh wow, Leonardo Romero is choosing. It's not reckless. I think Leonardo Romero is choosing to strike a contrast between some pages where there are many small panels and then some pages where there's one big panel, because maybe that's what modern comics want more than a Marvel issue in 1984. Maybe the story needs to slow down so you can take in this big scene. Maybe the space of, not the timing, but the space of the story, you just need to see a lot of geography. And it's hard to do that with, a small panel that's a quarter of a page and another small panel. And then does it happen one more time? That was 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
There's a
okay. It doesn't happen again with a full splash that bleeds onto the facing page. But
there's some half-page splashes really of that robot thing.
Yeah.
The introduction of that just before that second splash where he's looking across the base, that he initially uncovers that mysterious giant paw print. You think, oh, maybe some sort of robot. Then subsequently brushes off. I think it's on the front of a Jeep, and he sees the Revanche logo. That for me was a bit of a moment of, I was not expecting that, because these are one and done. It says ARA, but it's not Harmer, so I think it's not going to impact on continuity. It's going to be largely people wanting to tell their stories of G.I. Joe in a timeless way based on their childhood memories of the brand and that kind of thing. So it was really interesting to see, this modern component of a Real American Hero, encroaching into the story here with the appearance of Revanche as a logo on the initially the car, but then on the base itself.
Yeah, I had forgotten about the logo, and I'd also forgotten how much it looks like the Cobra logo. And I don't remember when we first talked about it 2 years ago, if we asked and found out, or if we're sort of guessing, is it a coincidence? Is it supposed to make us think of the Cobra logo? But it's a double R, right? Is the company Revanche Research?
It might be Revanche Robotics. Yeah, it's like
okay.
an R and an R reversed, make that kind of look like an R and R, but then also look a bit like a Cobra with this, the red and the stripes, but also making you think a little bit of the Arashikage logo, because there's that sort of that's part of their backstory as well.
Six broken red lines. So similarly to you, I thought, I bet Leonardo Romero has not been reading G.I. Joe the last 5 years. Or if he has, I don't know that he's like tracking something as specific as the Revanche logo and its storyline. And I wonder if this was something where in his plot or in his pitch, he suggested Cobra or a Cobra logo, and then, editor Alex Antone or creative consultant Diana Davis said, oh, what would actually fit pretty well here? And what I also thought for a moment when I got to this page was, are there going to be Blue Ninja here? And yeah. I don't think I actually want that, because I do want this issue to really sit on its own. You could do that with a Blue Ninja. You just have him defeat a Blue Ninja, and Hama never has to refer to it. No one even has to tell Hama that a Blue Ninja ever showed up in one of the comics that he didn't write. But to the extent that some readers are looking for something different with Revanche or the Blue Ninja, that if a different writer uses it, or if it shows up in another comic or medium, then it's sort of now you sort of have to accept it more. Like, well, it's not just Hama really plugging away at this thing that he seems interested in. It's like, no, they made an action figure, right? It's like you got to accept it now. And so for a moment I thought, oh, how deep is Leonardo Romero going to get into this very particular bits of sort of real American hero continuity? I'm also just struck by, on this page where we see the Revanche logo, that middle panel where we're close up on Spirit's eyes and his eyebrows, just how crisp and clear and clean and gorgeous this is. And you said it really nicely earlier when I was talking about the cover, that Romero does so much with so few lines. And I think if you are young or new to comics, you might look at this art and think, oh, well, that's easier because there are fewer lines. And if you're thinking of like Greg Capullo or Todd McFarlane or Jim Lee or Jeff Darrow, right? You think, no, more lines equals harder. And that can be true, but it's not a hard and fast rule, because there are plenty of artists who draw a lot of lines where some of those lines aren't actually describing anything specific. It's just sort of a decoration. It's just style. It's just surface. And sometimes that's really fun. And sometimes it just shows an artist who's still learning. In the case of an artist like this, like an Alex Toth or a Mike Parabeck who drew Batman Adventures, this book based on the 1992 TV cartoon. If you draw very few lines, every line has to be perfect. Because if you draw any one line kind of wrong, and what I mean is if it's not describing something specifically and accurately, like a little line on the side of a nose or a glove or a crease, if you draw it wrong, the whole drawing kind of falls apart. And so you have to be really good and confident to draw seemingly so little and to pull it off. And it's like, I think people might look at this and think like, oh, it looks sort of like coloring books, or it looks sort of like animation, because there's a lot of open space and flat colors, and some of the lines are thick. Like, no, coloring books don't look this good, folks. Specifically, particularly like licensed coloring books in the 80s, where it was a decent artist drawing some G.I. Joe or GoBots coloring book, but probably not someone who had this much talent. And I just really like this close up, this big eyebrow, this big eye, this big shadow on the nose, and these flat colors.
Yeah, and it's kind of in that same family of art as Tom Riley on the main G.I. Joe Energon universe book. Right?
Yes.
The next big splash is a really interesting one for me, because it's this big open panel. It introduces the Revanche base, but it tells us an awful lot as you're going along, that there's all of these stubs of the trees that have been chopped down. So we kind of, you could just build the world out that sort of Revanche of taking this isolated location. They've just wiped out a huge tranche of the forest to make their base. They're not overly concerned with the environment, extend that to the trees, extend that to the animals. And then in terms of just the storytelling, you're just beginning to sort of piece together it, with a lot of these subtle hints and clues. There's vehicles there. So it's, maybe it's not entirely deserted, but it doesn't look very active, so maybe people have left in a hurry. There's lots of shell casings on the ground from so there's obviously been a firefight. Something has happened here that's not gone down well. The mystery of these initial robotics that he's found, and then the kind of the clues from the blackboard that we begin to see there. Base evacuation is near. Made me think a little bit of The Last of Us, when you're snooping about in some of those mysterious locations, and there's these clues sort of dotted about, including on the likes of blackboards.
Before we talk about
whiteboards,
before we talk about after the page 6-7 splash, I just want to say one more thing about the drawing and the storytelling here. Just imagine this 2-page spread, which does have 5 additional panels on it. Just imagine if Romero had drawn Spriit turned around 180 degrees and he was facing us. Now, that might not make as much story sense because he needs to be moving away from us toward this building. He's just seen this building. So the story point here is he's just come out of the woods. He's finally reached the sort of top of the hill where trees have started to be cut down, or radiating out from the building are no longer being cut down. And we see him see this, right? This piece of art would sell for a lot more money if somehow it was arranged so that Spriit, we could see his face, we could see his front. Like, people don't want to buy a page with like Batman's heels and his cape. They want to buy a page with Batman's face and his bat symbol, right, and his utility belt, right? And you could arrange it so that, I don't know, maybe Spirit's sort of coming from the left and like starting to turn even further to his left, sort of seeing over his shoulder. But what I appreciate here is, sometimes in our interviews and sometimes in our reviews, we'll make a point that and writers have said to us, right? Story artists have said to us, the most important thing is the story. It's what's happening and how we feel about it. It's not like the pretty art. And the art has to be in service to the story. And every panel is an example of that, and this one particularly so, because I feel like a lesser artist would have drawn this 2-page spread in a way to show off Spriit a lot more, and that would be at the expense of this very specific story beat, which is a kind of gasp on Spirit's part, or like a shocked concern, like, oh my gosh, what's happened here? Or, oh my gosh, I have to go in there. And we don't actually need to see his face to pull that off. Okay, so Mark, back to you. There's a can of food. He feeds his awesome bird. We go to the next page, and there's a flashlight. And then what is Romero starting to reveal? What does Spriit see?
Yeah, so on the floor is this kind of robot dog looking thing, and it's a bit of a mystery. It sort of seems to be deactivated, decommissioned, out of action of some sort, but then there's a noise that attracts his attention. There's a bear sort of moving through a damaged portion of a wall, which brings him into a laboratory, and then we get the reveal of this giant robotic clawed hand bursting through. A lot of drama there, a lot of knocks Spriit back, so a lot of sort of tension. Actually, the robot we can see on that first page has already got a couple of bullet indentations in its chest, so maybe we can imagine, and some damage. It's only really got one arm, so we can imagine that perhaps it took part in that previous confrontation on the base that led to all of those bullet casings ending up on the floor. So,
can I jump in for a moment? You have described that a previous fight took place here, and this is a case where I think Romero makes a choice that how much sort of horror or just violence or death to show from this previous fight. Some of it is, I think a lot of people did get away, right? So I don't know that we would see like corpses, recent corpses, or like grisly, rotting corpses. But what's the second story in G.I. Joe Frontline? Is it Icebound from Devil's Due?
I think that's the name of it. Yep. Okay. The second arc of Frontline. Yep.
Yeah. We have seen stories. Sometimes they're science fiction movies set in space stations or spaceships. We've seen stories where characters go through a base and they see all of the violence that's taken place there, and they start to piece it together. And there are more and more clues. Some of them are visual. Some of them might be, dialogue, like something terrible happened here, or like turn on the power, and they like press the button, and like the final log or diary entry of the last people, Okay, so what I want to point out here is that I sometimes think about G.I. Joe as a PG property that is sometimes PG-13. And certainly the comic is generally PG-13, and the cartoon from the 80s is PG. But imagine a different comic artist. I'm not saying a better or worse one, just a different one. Like imagine your favorite horror comic book artist, or someone who draws and inks with a lot more ornate detail and but still a lot of shadows. It's like, how would this scene play differently if there was a lot of blood splattered on various walls, or like parts of, I guess, scientists or revenge robots, and there's a lot of sort of tasteful restraint here. Like this doesn't need to be that kind of horror.
Yeah, there's a slight hint of it. It's on the PDF page 18 that has sort of these bones there
like
on the ground.
Like a rib cage.
It looks like a rib cage. It's not spelt out what species of animal this is, or whether it could be a human, but some sort of animal, and the two baby bears are there with their muzzles sort of covered in blood, as if they had been eating. And part of the puzzle here is, what is this adversary? What is this mechanical monster? And there's like little hints that we sort of can piece together, that there's this poster board with showing like a cross section, armor on the outside and skeleton inside, which makes you think, okay, actually this isn't a robot. This is likely to be an organic creature on the inside of an armor. And then, there seems to be, that this creature has been hunting other animals. And Michael, and we see some of the interior when Spriit shoots the armor, exposes the eye socket, and there is an organic eye there with some hair fur underneath. And my conclusion, which I think is a fair one, is that we've got like some sort of bear in the suit underneath. And the reason that we got these two baby bears is maybe that it's the mama bear. And she's still in this suit, but looking after her baby bears, and maybe that's why she's been hunting animals to continue to feed them. There we go. That's my and at the end of the story, when this the creature's been defeated, it's lying down. I think this is the last but one page. These two baby bears are sort of showing concern. They're sort of curiously looking over at the armor and sort of coming up to it, as it almost with a what's happened? Are you okay? Kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a good take. I wanted to point out back on page 8. There's this is the scene with the flashlight where Spriit sees these robots, these sort of endoskeleton quadrupeds, and the bottom left panel is a box of bullets hitting the floor, right? Mm-hmm. And Spriit and Freedom hear it happen. Mm-hmm. And then in that final panel, there's that blur, which is like the thing, the mystery thing, the bear rushing past them. And I think it's fun in a wordless story to take a full panel to have something that makes a specific sound effect when you can't or won't have a sound effect there, like crash or clang. Because it's sort of it's a reminder of what we're doing. We're reading a wordless story, and we're inserting meaning in our heads. I wanted to ask you what your take on the information that Romero writes out as handwriting in this base, that on page 9 on the far left and in the distance, this sort of control rooms, experimentation room with a robot arm and like maybe an operating table and an animal skull at Spriit walks through. And I really love his pose with the pistol and the flashlight. But there are two sort of spots in this panel where there's like these whiteboards and I guess former scientists have written stuff here. And then we see more writing. What's that? 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 19. The second to last page, where at the end of the story, Spriit is reading the notebook of the scientist or scientists. And then on the final page, he hands it over to Duke. Project 22, a success, needs something, adjust something, unmatched. Only concern is that he seems to retain instinctive behavior. Is all this writing too much? Because it's a wordless story.
Maybe a bit much. I'm okay with it. It doesn't ruin the book for me by any means, but
Okay.
to me, it felt a little bit like someone who's been playing, as I say, a lot of Last of Us, or some of these similar sort of games where, a key part of the mechanics is you're kind of wandering about, in a dark place with a torch, you're seeing clues, maybe words on the blackboard, you're picking up a notebook and reading some clues to help piece together the puzzle of what's happened in this particular place. It feels like that's possibly a piece of the inspiration. Yeah, I mean, ideally, if we're going full silent, maybe we try and avoid words entirely if we can. But it helps flesh out the mystery of this particular story.
Did you say that somewhere? Am I making this up? Does Spriit read that the armor around the visor is a weak point? Or...
Yeah, on one of the on the blackboard, this is about page 12, 13-ish. There's a poster which says Project 22, and there's a poster with half battlesuit, half skeleton, and just before Spriit finds his rifle and pulls it out of the rubble, there's a close-up of the top of that poster where someone has written, "Visor area needs reinforcement, impact to this damage." So that's, I think, where he spots that's a weak area that he can try and go after.
Okay. I think that's a little too much for me. But if we're comparing this to the original Silent Interlude, Larry Hama had 22 pages and Romero has 20. And there was a little bit of writing on a screen in the original Silent Interlude, although I don't think it's crucial to the story. I think it's an enhancement. My other sort of comment about art and storytelling is Spriit dislocates his shoulder, right? When he gets buried in rubble and he's already been knocked into a wall. He's been punched across a room through a wall, and then rubble lands on him. And then Freedom attacks the robot. I'm not actually quite sure where Freedom gets the robot, like pulling a wire. I guess it's the back of the head, but I don't know. And then, oh my gosh, the robot punches the bird. It's really, as a pet
Ouch.
owner, that's distressing. But good news, everyone, the bird's okay. So the page that Spriit retrieves his rifle from the debris, I think what I'm seeing on that top wide panel with the 5 lightning bolts around Spriit's shoulder is that he has dislocated his shoulder, and somewhere in the previous 3 panels and this panel with the lightning bolts, he's actually resetting his shoulder. He's popping it back in the socket. And then he grimaces and takes his hand off of his arm, and then sort of the camera pulls back from behind and he sort of rotates his injured arm, and so it's back to 80%. And I thought, cool. I like that this takes so many panels to show that he's injured, to show that there's consequences of this attack, and that he does something about it. I do feel like I'm missing some speed lines or something to show the actual. I have not dislocated my shoulder, but I've seen it happen in a lot of movies. And the sort of moment, where someone's always like, "Let me distract you for a moment." What? Or like, Nicolas Cage is like crazed and he runs into a doorway, so he pops his arm back in or something. I feel like I just needed some speed lines to show that Spriit is actually pushing his arm up. But I do like all the drawings here. And then I think my last comment in terms of art, and maybe my last comment for the whole issue, is we do get to see Romero draw another Joe. He draws Duke in like 1.5 panels, and we see 2 tomahawks. And I say this gently. I think this is someone drawing a weird G.I. Joe vehicle like for the first time, and I know what it is. It does look a little bit off. And, everyone says when you draw a character, it takes you a few issues to really get them. Or, if you draw like a crazy, weird G.I. Joe vehicle, maybe you draw it a lot better, if it shows up on every page. And Romero only gets to draw it 1 or 2 times here. So if he ever draws G.I. Joe again, I look forward to if he gets to draw a tomahawk. Really nailing it the next time.
I think my final thoughts on this one is that, that Leonardo Romero, he sure knows how to draw. It looks really nice. The colors complement it, work really well. And anytime Leonardo Romero wants to draw more G.I. Joe, I would be more than happy to have him back. The story itself is interesting. I think there's only so much you can do with 20 pages in a one and done. And to introduce it, to wrap it up, to have an exciting middle, it's tough. So maybe feels slightly slight in terms of the overall impact of it coming away from it. But I think a one shot, 20 pages is a close to impossible task to have something that is completely satisfying.
I will say, if I can slightly counter, because I do agree with you, like more action, more characters, and then it's like too many characters, I can't keep track, he's running out of space. I do think the emotional stakes that Romero has, where we're worried about Spriit, we're worried about freedom, we're worried about these other animals, the foxes, the bear to some extent, or maybe to a great extent, and I think the ending is great. That Romero takes a valuable, almost half page to just have this little. It's not necessary narratively, but emotionally, it's really satisfying that he feeds Spriit. Sorry, he's since I was a kid, I get these two guys mixed up. The guy and his bird. Spriit, because and because the packaging says tracker really big, and in small letters it says Spriit. So I'll never get this right, even though this was like the 3rd figure I ever got. Spriit feeds freedom again, so we come back on it. But then those final 2 panels, he leaves this offering to this wolf, which brings us back around to the first page and the second page and third page, where they are rescuing animals and he's rescuing a wolf. And that's just a nice closure.
Yeah, good word for it. We are about halfway through Silent Missions month. Still to come, April 23rd is Roadblock from Andrew Cronky, and then Duke on April the 30th from Wes Craig. So look forward to more Silent Missions in this G.I. Joe Silent Missions month. So all very exciting, and catch us next time as we cover it. If you're new to Talking Joe, you can find us over at talkingjoe.co.uk. That is the website. where we can be found, and it points to all of the places we are: YouTube, all of the podcast platforms, onto Facebook, where we talk about the latest G.I. Joe news and the latest episodes and all of that good stuff. We are also on Patreon, patreon.com/talkingjoe. So a big thanks to Richard, Sam, Bill, Christopher, Justin, Rob, Shane, Simon, Cris, Joe, Craig, Frank, Mike, D, Shane V2. I think this version comes with 2 miniguns, and Infinite Entertainment. Tim, where can you be found when you're not talking to me about G.I. Joe?
Watch video essays on TV and film from me and my partners at Atomic Abe. That's on YouTube. I have a brick and mortar comic book store, Hub Comics, just outside Boston. And I write about G.I. Joe at arealamericanbook.com.
Very good. So I think we are done for this time. But before we go, Tim, please remind us of something.
Nobody beats Talking Joe, an international podcast.
Laters.